They tried to drown it out with noise, but this ancient prayer holds a power that could change everything you feel, believe, and live, starting today. In this video, you'll uncover how a centuries-old prayer practice, once the lifeline of kings, warriors, and saints, can still quiet the noise, heal the heart, and awaken a strength you didn't know you had. Before we dive into this life-changing journey, take a moment to tap that like button and hit subscribe. Because what you're about to discover could shift the way you see life, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. And by the time you've experienced this life-changing message, you won't just understand the power of it. You'll feel it so deeply that living without it simply won't be an option. For Christians, prayer is more than words. It's a sacred lifeline to the heart of God, an ancient practice that carries His peace into the storms of life. In a world drowning in noise and distraction, it becomes the quiet place where faith deepens, burdens lift, and the soul rests in His presence. Sometimes the deepest truths are not shouted from rooftops, but whispered into the quiet corners of our hearts. Let's begin it in a slightly modified manner, one that doesn't simply explain, but invites you to step inside the meaning. If a person has ever longed to speak to someone who truly understands the unspoken aches of the soul, then they already know the essence of prayer. When heaven listens and earth speaks. But prayer, in the Christian perspective, is not merely a request line to heaven, it is a living conversation. Therefore, it moves in two directions. Believers speak, and they believe God speaks back, not always in words, but in peace, in conviction, in clarity. And if this divine dialogue is real, it means that no heart is ever truly unheard, no tear truly unseen. It is, in the end, more than ritual. It is the bridge between the finite and the infinite, the human breath reaching toward the eternal voice. If a person has ever longed for more than distant belief, if they have ever desired to truly know the one they worship, then they already understand why prayer cannot be an optional part of faith. When words become a bridge to the heart of God, but prayer in the Christian perspective is far more than a spiritual habit. It is a lifeline that draws the believer closer to the very heart of God. Therefore, every whispered gratitude, every tearful confession, every silent pause becomes a thread in an unbreakable bond. Christians see prayer not as speaking into emptiness, but as stepping into the warm light of God's presence, where love is not just taught, but felt. If a relationship with God is like a garden, prayer is the steady watering that keeps it alive. Without it, faith risks becoming dry, brittle, and easily broken. But with it, the believer's heart softens, their trust deepens, and their ability to hear God's will grows sharper. Through prayer, they learn to see life not through fear or chaos, but through the eyes of one who knows the end from the beginning. And so, in the stillness of prayer, Christians believe they are not only speaking to God, but walking with Him, learning His ways, resting in His love, and becoming more like the one they follow. In this way, prayer becomes more than a practice. It becomes a relationship, pulsing with life, intimacy, and unshakable hope. Now moving towards a truth that speaks most clearly in the storms of life. When the heart is weary and the path feels dark, if someone has ever felt the weight of life pressing in so tightly that breathing itself feels like a victory, they already understand this. When the soul finds shelter in the midst of the storm. But prayer in the Christian experience is not only for moments of joy or routine, it becomes a refuge when life grows heavy. Therefore, in seasons of loss, fear, or confusion, Christians turn to prayer as the place where burdens can be laid down and peace can be found. They believe that each cry, no matter how small, reaches the ear of a God who listens, not with impatience, but with deep compassion. If the weight feels unbearable, they pray not because problems vanish instantly, but because the one they pray to gives strength to endure. Peace, they say, comes not from the absence of trouble, but from the presence of God in the middle of it. And then it happens, calm in the chaos. The storm may still rage, but inside there is a steady reminder that God is near, guiding, holding, and strengthening every trembling heart. Now moving towards a truth that shapes the choices we make and the paths we take. If someone has ever stood at a crossroads, Unsure which way leads to life and which to regret, they already know the longing for true guidance. When heaven's light falls on earth's crossroads. But prayer is not simply about presenting a wish list, it is seeking the heart and wisdom of God for life's most pressing decisions. Therefore, when temptation whispers or uncertainty clouds the mind, believers bow in prayer, asking not only for direction, but also for the grace to walk the right path once it is revealed. If someone has ever been so overwhelmed by goodness that words felt too small, they already know the heart of gratitude. When the soul sings without music but prayer, in the Christian life, is not only for times of need, it is also the sacred space where thankfulness overflows. Therefore, believers lift their voices, not to ask for more, but to acknowledge the blessings already given, the breath in their lungs, the love in their lives, the grace that meets them each morning. If someone has ever longed for a voice of clarity in the middle of chaos, they already understand why stillness matters. When silence becomes the language of heaven. But prayer in the Christian walk is not only about speaking, it is also about listening. Therefore, many believers intentionally carve out moments of quiet, away from the constant noise, to be still before God. In this stillness, they believe His presence can be felt more deeply, His voice more clearly recognized, not through shouts, but through the gentle whisper of the Spirit. If someone has ever felt that their way of praying was somehow less holy than another's, they already need to hear this. When the heart finds its own language to speak with God. But prayer in the Christian faith is not bound to a single form. Therefore, it can be as formal as a centuries-old liturgy or as simple as a whisper in the dark. Some find deep meaning in reciting set prayers, words passed down through generations that carry the weight of countless voices before them. Others prefer to speak in their own words, letting their hearts pour out freely, unpolished and unplanned. And then, when all has been said about prayer, its forms, its stillness, its comfort, there remains one truth that ties it all together. In the chaos of our time, prayer is not a luxury, it is survival. When prayer becomes the anchor in the storm, if someone has ever felt lost in the endless noise, voices, screens, deadlines, they already know the craving for a place of peace. But prayer in the Christian belief is not just a quiet pastime. It is a weapon against distraction and a shield against despair. Therefore, in a world that demands constant attention, believers intentionally turn their focus to God, shutting out the clamor for a moment of holy stillness. In the end, prayer is not simply a spiritual habit, it is the heartbeat of faith. In a world where noise never stops and demands never end, it offers a sacred pause, a steady anchor, and a lifeline to the one who knows us completely. If this message has stirred something in your heart, let's keep the conversation going. Your thoughts matter. Share your reflections or your own experiences with prayer in the comments below. If you'd like to journey deeper with us, remember to like this post, subscribe so you don't miss future reflections, and tap the notification bell to be reminded when new content is shared. And if you know someone who needs this encouragement today, please share it forward. It might be the spark they've been waiting for.